Dr. King, many have said that you helped put President Kennedy in the White House. In light of what has happened, do you regret that?
Well, I'm not at all a political analyst, but there are those who contend that the Negro vote had a great deal to do with President Kennedy being elected, and that many Negroes were influenced to vote for the president because of a call that he made to my wife during an arrest here in Georgia. Now, if this had anything to do with it, I certainly don't regret it, because I think President Kennedy made a most significant contribution in civil rights. And while he may not have done all that some feel that he should have done, I would be the first to say that President Kennedy came forth with the most comprehensive civil rights bill that we have ever had from any president, and he had a great understanding of the depths and dimensions of the problem, and I really feel that he was a friend to the cause of civil rights, and he created a climate of civil rights concern in Washington and in the nation.
You have had attempts made on your life and have been threatened perhaps even tonight. What is it like to walk under this constant threat?
Well, it's often difficult, but when you live with it so long, you almost become immune to being afraid as a result of these threats. I guess you have to come to the point of looking at these things philosophically, and this is where I have decided to stand. I believe firmly that this cause is right, and that someone must have the courage and the fortitude to stand up for it, even if it means suffering or even if it means death. And I have always felt that unmerited suffering is redemptive, and even if I have to die for this cause, if physical death is a price that others will have to pay, then it is a price that is paid to free the soul of our nation and to free our children from a permanent spiritual death. And in this sense, I think it is very redemptive, or it can be, even if it occurs.
Thank you, Dr. King. Dr. King, how did the news reach you today?
Well, I was on the telephone having a conversation with a member of my congregation. And in the midst of the conversation, she said, "I just heard the news that President Kennedy was shot." And at that point, I told her that I would call back, and I wanted to go to the radio or the television to get the news. And I immediately turned on the television, and they were talking about it. And they were still saying that the president had been shot, but they were not sure of whether he had died. So this was the time I got the news.
What was your first thought?
It was one of the most shocking things I'd ever heard. Frankly, I was very upset and couldn't adjust to it and could hardly believe it in the beginning. And after I continued hearing the news, I became very pessimistic concerning the possibilities of the president living, even though they had not come out with a confirmed statement that he had died. But it was very shocking and upsetting.
Did you think about perhaps the last time you had seen the president?
Yes, I did. Naturally, in these moments, you begin to think of personal experiences that you've had with people who pass on. And I started thinking about the several meetings that I've had with the president this year. I think I met with him some 5 times this year. The last time was the time that I took a group up from Birmingham to discuss the crisis there after the bombing of the church and the murder of the 6 children. So all of these things came back to mind.
What is the pleasantest memory you have of President Kennedy?
Well, I think above all, the president was a family man, and I always enjoyed this side of his life. And one of the first times that I went to visit him at the White House was a time that I had dinner with the president and his wife. And he took me around the White House on a sort of brief sightseeing tour. And we started talking about various things, and he finally took me to the Lincoln Room. We had been talking about the Emancipation Proclamation that I had taken, and I had given a document to the president on this whole issue. And when I got in the Lincoln Room, we started discussing this again, and I said, this will be a good room to sign the second Emancipation Proclamation. And he took this in a very humorous vein, and he said, well, everybody has to realize that there's a great need to do something about this issue and do something about it immediately. But he was not offended at all in my saying that at that instance. And I always appreciated the president's sense of humor, his devotion to his family, and I did get a chance to see some of his home life on my visits to the White House.
There are those who say you did much to help put him in the presidency. Do you regret that in light of what has happened?
No, I don't. I'm not at all a political analyst, but there have been political analysts who argued that the Negro vote did a great deal to bring about the election of President Kennedy. And some argue that the telephone call that he made to my wife influenced a lot of Negro voters. That may be true. I